what got you into VFX design and how your courses led you to this startup.
I used to get obsessed with matchboxes, so many matchboxes, because it used to be so colorful, illustrative. It teaches me a lot of things, especially. One is because of all these different illustrations that attracts me. What is your end goal you are trying to achieve? Human-centered AI is something which is very important because, you have to make it human-centered and design the AI around it. Transparency, responsibility, accountability, compassion, equity. Trust comes from all these different factors in terms of how this is going to do.
In the era of AI, what is one traditional design skill which is about to become obsolete? Hello and welcome to another fantastic episode of Pitty Podcast. We are in this amazing studio in Fremont and super excited to jump on the agentic user experience design bandwagon. This is the hottest topic, not only just in every AI conference, but also I just got out of RSA security conference. People are talking about user experience and design for cybersecurity products. For Pete's sake, this is the topic everybody should make a must-have in their portfolio of courses they're going to take. So without further ado, let's bring on an expert who's spent many years designing AI products, AI experiences, and now Salesforce has bet on his company, acquired it, and now he's a senior design of user experiences for AI and agentic applications at Salesforce. Let's bring on Ranjeet Tayi from Informatica and now part of Salesforce, who has made his mission in life to propagate this knowledge of how design is not just a profession, but it's part of life. He chose several domains and he owns them because he's crazy about domain names. He named his daughter based on the highest value domain he could get. So this person is really crazy about UX. Without further ado, let's bring on Ranjeet. Ranjeet, welcome to Pitch Cafe podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Wonderful. 20 years in UX, 7 patents. You did extra courses in user experience and design and started a VFX company. Your first stint was as a startup founder of Mind Vision. So tell us what got you into VFX design and how your courses led you to this startup.
For everyone, I think, classroom is generally you start your knowledge or some fascination from your classroom knowledge. But for me, it's different. It was a fascination from a matchbox. I used to get obsessed with matchboxes, so many matchboxes, because it used to be so colorful, illustrative. I used to have thousands of them. And a small product used to really make me think because I'm so obsessed of thousands of them, because it teaches me a lot of things, especially. One is because of all these different illustrations that attracts me. That's all about branding, if you think deeper into it. Second one is especially the product by itself. It's super functional, right? You can able to shake it so that you know how many are there.
Yeah.
You hold one stick, you get to understand the quality. In one strike, it will actually fires it. It does a job.
Yeah.
And the third factor, especially, and it also has a safety aspect of it. It won't burn till end, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it, it's all about design, usability, and it's all about branding and engineering, right?
Wonderful.
That's all about design.
Yeah.
And that's how I got fascinated. My education, my profession, everything is design. That's how I went into design.
Wonderful. And what did you study that got you excited to do your startup in VFX?
It was later. Park was into design management, So when I started a startup right after school, especially on VFX called Mind Visions. It's one of the early startup on VFX and films. It's in 2002, very early. In fact,
early. It would have been a very big thing back then.
It used to be a big thing. In fact, we didn't have that level of computing also, computers and with that processors, right? So we used to render in Film City and we used to do so many films especially, right? We used to learn it, we used to get it. It's more about fascinating stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then I did for 4 years. We used to self-fund. We did so many interesting projects. We learned, do, and whatnot and stuff. I exited in 2006. In fact, my co-founder still runs it. The company still exists and they still do top films in India right now, including many other films they have done.
Amazing.
So that's where I think, after that I did, I realized like, there is thing called human factors and need to learn. That time there was not much education and I went for IIT to get trained in human factors program and then did a design management in Park.
Wonderful. IIT Bombay, Park, and then your amazing startup. They did VFX for films like This Is Incredible. And here you are at Salesforce. Let's come back to your journey. So tell me your fascination with domain names.
So people call me, in fact, like my wife calls it, it's like, I have a domain disease,
Yeah.
right?
Domain disease. What
That's
is that?
right.
Explain to me.
So I'll tell you, this is also again, I'm super passionate about little things, it makes me little interesting. So was blocked. I registered my domain name in 98, okay, when internet was early, right? Early internet, Ranjit.com. I lost eventually in 2012 because it used to cost me a quite while before, like, before it was like, expensive than my pocket money. So I lost it. And again, I got the same domain back in 2005, and even today it exists, ranjit.com. And yeah, so I have so far around 160 plus domain names. All of
Crazy.
us in our home has it. And in fact, when my daughter born, everyone looking at, hey, you should name with letter or looking with stars. I was looking at, no, I'll look at domain name. So
So what is your daughter's name?
Niti.
Okay.
Niti means beautiful.
So domain name is available. That's why you picked her name.
That's my criteria. My wife's criteria was like, stars and other things, but
Oh my God. Okay. The world is turning into a digital simulation. You're the proof of it. So coming back to your journey, let's come back to this. So this is who you are. Basically, you're design obsessed, user experience obsessed. That's who you are. So tell us, what did you do with your experience in human factors? I knew you started with consulting and then you hopped to Informatica. That was your first big break into enterprise. But really, what is a startup guy who's got thrill of launching products in short cycles, going into this big enterprise? Informatica is a huge name. What they did was in the big data wave, they leveraged it. Such a big brand. And then you stayed there steady for many years. What did you learn at Informatica about designing AI experiences?
So yeah, I just want to touch base before that. Once I was actually exiting my startup, right? So I was really thinking about what is that I should do next. So VFX and design, it's all about beautiful pixels, doing a lot of creativity and all of the things. But what is the thing which I realized is, especially, I want to do a little bit more scientific. And second thing is, which has a very solid human impact, right? So it's VFX is great, like a lot of fun, entertainment media. But the other side, this I found it more fascinating. And that's where I thought, user research is something which is important. I joined user research company called Pure IT Usability Research. That's where, I learned all the research part, in terms of human factors engineering and stuff like that. And that is where I got in love with enterprise software.
You started liking enterprise software coming from VFX. You'll have to explain that to me.
The reason why I started liking about is like, enterprise software back then is chaotic.
And it's boring.
It's boring. It's massive. It's ugly. Okay. But the thing is, that's an opportunity. That is a great opportunity because, see, every business run on enterprise software, right? You can't live it. People are using these tools to do their job.
Yep.
Whether they like it or not, that's a separate thing,
Yeah.
They cannot leave it. So that's where I felt that's an opportunity. You can create impact. And when Informatica reached me out, right? Informatica is a data company.
Right.
So what they do is all the products are data.
Yep.
Okay. And that's where I saw that, hey, data and design is a complementary thing.
Yeah.
And that's an opportunity. And in fact, like, I'm a long timer at Informatica.
Yep.
Okay. I've been more than 14 years. Okay. Gone through super transformations, especially. Okay. There was, when I joined it, there used to be a whole transformation of big data world, right? The big data is coming up. There was the SaaS world, the whole 100% cloud thing coming into it, on-prem to cloud.
And then mobile.
All this transformation, right? Think about this, like, last 15 years, there is big transformation across the industry on data. All these industrial transformations, right? Whether it's mobile, whether it's big data, whether it's social media, everything happened in last 50.
Yeah.
These all generates data, right? These all data needs to be managed. And these are the tools Informatica does. And that's an opportunity. And in fact, I also keep growing as these different waves of transformations happening. So Informatica was a private first public company. Then we went private to transform the whole organization into cloud from on-prem. I went to that transformation. And then we introduced in between brand new products, just like in operating as an intrapreneur inside Informatica and helping by design. And we designed something like data-centric security. This is world's first data-centric security. We tried that out. And then it pivoted into a different product called Catalog. And it's one of the leading catalogs in the world right now.
So let me stop here. What did you learn about designing products for security versus a normal product? Because it was a hot RSA.
Correct.
Yep.
I've been RSA. I was just 2 or 3 times. I was a speaker at RSA. I've spoken so many topics on privacy.
Yeah. What is different about cybersecurity products versus any other product you design, or is it the same?
No, it's the users are different. The use cases are different, right? For example, think about the use cases of privacy and security are more about securing this thing, threat hunters, or maybe bad actors, right? There are different problems they are solving. For example, firewalls, basically protecting their secure sensitive information, right? These are using these tools kind of things, right? And there are anomaly detection. There are different kinds of security problems, and there are different kinds of this thing. And designing regular product, it's all about user, right? User use cases in terms of we define the design for based on that particular thing. Typically, design process is same for any product per se. But it's end of the day, the use cases, the goal of the users, who are the users, and then, what is the intent, what is the business objective there. So that's how you design the products.
Okay, let's go back to your story of Informatica. Yeah, go ahead. And you were through different waves, and the company went private. You did a spin-off kind of a project, and then go ahead.
And then basically we keep doing it, and especially in somewhere around we did this. I was telling about this transformations happening, right? Somewhere around 2000, when we went private, right? The whole idea is to make it 100% cloud company and do an re-IPO. Okay, we did that. In fact, in that transformation, we made 100% cloud, and then we went an IPO again in 2020, and then we had again the transformation started again. Once we public again, the transformation is into a whole AI transformation. That's what we're driving. And then, we got acquired in 2025 by Salesforce. These are different transformations. And I think you are learning, growing, and there are a lot of trends keeps changing. There are new opportunities coming opportunities, and we keep innovating, we keep driving. And it's a lot of learning curve, especially the journey is amazing because, people keep asking me why are you that long? That too, you are in Silicon Valley, you are such a connected person. But it's all about thing is the products which we are doing, really amazing use cases, especially. There is so much of complexity and there is so much opportunity to innovate.
Wonderful, wonderful. So if you look at, so let's say I'm a product manager or I own this product in a company which is trying to explain to me how you use your trace framework. I know you're very big proponent of TRAC, trace framework. So let's do it ground up. You also say that you should consider data, engineering, and design all three together when you design an experience in AI or agentic. So give me your guidebook. If you have to guide somebody, let's say I own a product in agentic AI, and you're helping me out as a UX person. Tell me how I should go about.
See, think about this, right? And think about fundamentally. Let's come to from what is agentic thing, right? Agentic UX or agentic, it's all about basically autonomy, design for autonomy, right? Agentic, it's all about, always I think about agent is something like, your extended colleague, okay? Or something like,
Companion,
it's a companion kind of thing, right? So when you design a use case, which you want to make it agentic, right? It has multiple factors, especially it's all about the behavioral aspects of an agent of design. That's what it matters, right? Generally, there are multiple things matters in terms of how do you design that particular use case thing. Typically, everyone has different methods of doing agents, right? The way at least I think around especially is there are 5 major things which you look at when you are designing an agent. First of all, everything starts with a goal, right? End of what is that we want to do, right? What is your end goal you're trying to achieve? And how is that agent going to help you to do that particular task without with your minimal intervention.
Yeah, wonderful. So the agentic workflows are very autonomous, as in there's a lot of automation, and the human in the loop is kind of tricky. So where do these frameworks break? How do you have the human in the loop? How do you make it human in the loop?
So think about, I was talking about, we were talking about agency, which is also control stuff, right? See, basically, what will happen if you are completely there is no human in the loop and everything AI is doing, right? What happens is, especially, you will not have any control, especially. You don't even know what is happening around. What it breaks is, if that happens, what it breaks is it loses the trust, right? Because it will happen, and it actually creates a factor of fear in terms of oh, I can't trust them, what will you do? You will do. Second, third one is especially in terms of when you don't have control, right? That anything can happen, right? You lose the particular impression. You don't know what exactly going on, and especially what it's is confidence, right? But think about this, you have everything designed in a transparent way. It reasons you, because one of the bigger thing is also reasoning, right? When it comes to agentic AI, right? How well you are reasoned, so that you can able to reason, you can able to see it, right? You know why the certain decisions are made, okay? And agentic can, because the good part about agentic is all about, it can also think, it can also act. That's the difference. It's not just basically in your traditional AI, right? For example, predictive AI, it will tell you it give you recommendation. Whereas in Copilot, it tells you do this, right? But when it comes to agentic AI, it can also think, reason, act. That's the key thing. And the most important thing for these all things to happen is context. Okay? The context is a key. The context is a king. In which context the person is doing certain things, and then it can able to reason, it can able to predict, it can able to find, it can able to do all those things and tell you hey, do you want to confirm this, or that's where the human in the control, or do you want to continue forward? It does all this by itself, instead of doing so many. We are building so many agents, in fact, right? So you still need to design, because this is all design. If you think about it, the reason is a design. How well you are reasoning it, how well you are creating these agentic plans, the frameworks, how well you are actually thinking about this thing, how well you are telling the user that what is the AI doing? Is it thinking? Is it ideating? What is it doing? And then the whole transparency of it, and the next best actions kind of thing. It also tell you in terms of, this could be your possible actions. Do you want to do this? Recommendation kind of thing. And then the conformance is basically actions, right? Yeah. And not only this thing, the good part about agentic AI also is it creates all the log of it, right? You can go and see what happened over time. And that's where it becoming very interesting at this moment, because this, it's more becoming more intelligence right now, intelligence at action, with keeping user in the center, still in control.
Wonderful. So, a great perspective on design for the agentic world. That being said, you've lived through so many technology waves, and you've emphasized that data should be fundamental and work with engineering and design. What did you mean when you made that statement? You created a paradigm shift. Things were not data centric when you started design, they were more user centric, eccentric. Things needed to look beautiful in the design. Even today, people spend a lot of time on Figma, but your paradigm of design is value centric. And in our conversation, you mentioned what value means. Can you elaborate a little bit for the audience what your paradigm shift in design is?
Okay. So, see, think about this, right? End of the day, everything is data centric, right? Even if you look at all this AI, a lot of things fail. People are talking about a lot of AI is failing, or certain things are really not working well. Because why? Because it's all about data, right? They don't have right data. You can have data, but it could be a messy data, right? Making this data right is the most important thing for anyone to success. I can give you a report saying that, hey, Vida, this is your report and you rank 5 in the full whatever thing, right? But if I will give you one more report, it says you failed in this report. Which one you trust? If you see only one report, you think that, that is right. but it's not, right? Because the data is messy out there, because there is so many copies of that particular thing, and it needs to be cleaned. It need to be make sure the data quality of that particular data is good. It should be right data set which is used for that thing, and with the context. That's where the success coming, and that's what we are doing as products, right? That's where we are helping all these organizations to get the context right, get the data right by having right data quality, looking at where the origins of data is getting proliferated, the lineage of it, and making sure the data has mastered data and have all kinds of information, so that making sure that this data is correct, right? That's the key. And when it comes to design also, data is super important for any decision making, whether it's a business decision making, whether you are doing a design of a product. Even your data helps. For example, let's say we do a lot of user research. User research is data helps us to analyze what user is thinking, and that's our data point to make a decision point.
Yeah.
You collect a lot of telemetry for figuring out how users are using your data. So that's also data that helps you to design that experience better. You will collect feedback mechanism. That's also data. It's help you in terms of how people are rating your service, whatever thing. That's your data. Same like the right. Every decision making data is important. The data centric design is all about using data to make your decision making.
Yeah.
Design decisions. The reason it's important, because rather than just doing a lot of assumptions,
Yeah.
right? Guided with data is the best way to be successful.
Wonderful. And, I just want to extend this very important discussion on data and context. What are some of the best practices to save data or to hand over data to the UX? Because you get data in all forms. When does the UX team do its best? What kind of data do you prefer?
So typically, right, the way it works is, especially we have our research teams, research partners, especially like in Informatica, in Salesforce, we have fantastic researchers, user researchers, who really studied human factors and who really user understanding. They understand behavioral aspects of the users, and they do user research interviews and stuff. There are a lot of methods which they collect data, and they work in partnership with other designers. Designers and researchers are paired who help work with product managers, and we get data from all kinds of people. For example, let's say there's a feedback which we get from analysts, we get feedback from product managers, there are information which we get from engineering teams. It's like, always I will say, design is a team sport. Okay, it's what designers, the power of designers is, designers has a power called empathy. Okay, and then designers have a good skills of visualization. They can able to visualize, they can able to connect dots, they can able to think big picture, and able to make that complex thing in an abstract way, right? And also designers are mostly better storytellers, right? Because they study design, right? And mostly they are always users advocates, right? They use all kinds of, they try to, because this is where researchers helps to designers to actually give the data, because it's all about numbers, and not every designers really understand numbers, but that's a skill by itself. But some designers can do both roles, designers and research roles, but both are do different practices, because it has a lot of depth inside it.
Right. So does that mean designers are better as storytellers?
I cannot say. It depends on, typically, storytelling. Designers are passionate about storytelling. So I'd say, of course, see, anyone can tell a story, right? Typically designers are trained in empathy. Designers are trained in design thinking and storytelling. So that's how they always want to tell bigger stories, because, they always want in the world of complexity to simplicity. That's how their fundamental philosophy is, right? They always think like that, right? How can we simplify? How can we actually make things usable, pretty, or make it great? Or how can we improve the value of certain things? Something like that, right?
Wonderful. On that note, what are the top three things you look for when you approve a user experience design? What delivers the most value? The top three things you look for, what should be there?
So I think I have a fantastic team with us, especially amazing designers. They come from a lot of various backgrounds, especially, right? Typically, top three things, the way we look at in terms of best user experiences. First of all, the biggest thing which designers do is problem solving. Okay. First, before that, if you think about problem solving, are we solving a right problem?
Yeah.
Okay. Identifying, prioritizing that problem is the first big thing. Okay. Which is like, this is the biggest thing which we need to solve for this user. Number two is like, how did we solve it? How simply, like, the solution part. First one is identifying thing, solution part of it. And third one, especially in terms of, the value creation point of view, what value and impact it got created. These are the three different dimensions which I look at.
How do you measure the value?
Value can be measured in multiple ways. You can measure it in a dollar amount. Basically, your product is successful and customers love to pay it. Okay. Number two is value is especially like, happy users. So many people like to use, lot of consumption, lot of adoption, and give you a lot of feedback. That's two. And third one is especially in terms of, the value can be also, it can also quantify a value, especially on kind of like, the value can be quantifiable. Especially value is always meant in terms of, people who love it.
Yeah.
Right. And the business impact. And that's why we are game in the business, right? So that's going to be the biggest key. And third one, especially like, in terms of, what competitively, how you position, that's again come to the business point of view.
Wonderful. So, what's exciting about your work at Salesforce? Like, what are you most excited about in your new role as Director of User Experience Design for AI and applications?
I'm super excited about so many things actually, right? So I think, we were doing really great at Informatica, especially like Informatica by itself, it's also doing, that's the reason Salesforce, in fact, acquired us. So we are doing so many agents. We have this Claire, which is, AI engine, especially doing a lot of predictive AI, copilots, GPTs, conversational design, universal copilots, a lot of things, especially connecting so many dots on this. And I think the biggest thing right now, I'm super excited about the thing is we are in a inflection point right now. We are in a fascinating time because the world is gonna change. Because if you see it, things are changing. Everything is running, right? Things are changing every single week. It's very hard to keep up these days because and this is a big transformation. We never happened this level of whole Silicon Valley. There is no startup without a AI or an agent deck slide in their deck. Or we saw RSA, like everything is agents. The thing is, especially this is giving us so much of opportunity. It's the same time it is also gonna do a lot of shift in the industry, right? So everyone is trying, everyone is experimenting, everyone is stringing out their strength, everyone is playing in terms of their vision to expand their businesses and whatnot. And some businesses are also getting transformed due to this AI transformation thing. The reason why I'm super excited about user experience is because I'm a strong believer of design. First, I think like good design makes better living. That's a proposition I'm totally sold on for many years. Good design sells well. Number two, okay, design always creates value. These are the three things, right? And second thing is on a bigger transformation, right? Everything is becoming autonomous, agentic, and the thing is everything is becoming multimodal, headless, right? You can multiple devices, multiple things, right? It's voice, it's multimodalities are coming up, right? That's the beautiful part of it. The reason why I'm also excited about it is especially the way we design things is going to be different in this new world.
Can you explain at least one or two things which you see as a major shift as a practice in UX? Like what existed is going to change. Like it's an old book, old rule now. It needs to be cancelled out.
See, think about this, like old SaaS world, or like even before if you world, right? Especially, it's all about basically like doing a task. It's kind of a typical workflow based thing, right? You do one, two, three, and actually you do this particular task. So you click a button does something else,
Correct.
right? But in the new world, it's different. It's reverse actually. Reverse is especially like everything is a goal driven thing. Okay. Everything is intelligent enough. It understands the context. It understands the intent. It understands what you are trying to do and it's going to start helping you, right? The button will actually become something else.
In a conference, they say from endpoint to agent. So your endpoints become sensors. Is that correct? They know what you're doing. they have context. Is that correct?
That's right. Think about this, right? You're
Wow,
seeing
this is
so
such a
many
big
things.
shift.
It is a shift, right? Think about did you ever imagine cars drives by itself?
No, no.
And in fact, I started feeling they are driving better than me. In
Yes,
fact,
100%. I'll hand you that. I keep bumping my car. I don't think the way must do that, but
right? In fact, the thing is, this is a big shift which is going on, right? This is a big shift at the same time, right? This all needs to be designed.
yeah, the phone is an endpoint. It knows me.
Everything is it knows everything right now, right? But the thing is, especially in terms of how much control you have, is what's the key is. If you don't have control, will start. You don't want to keep your phone beside you.
Yeah,
You are scared about it, right?
yeah, and that trust factor is what you're calling is very important in design, and that comes from good design.
Yeah. And also, I keep telling about a lot of things, right? Design is a responsibility. I keep telling to so many people that, responsible design or design is a responsibility. As designers, we are also accountable for making people's life better.
Yeah, 100%. I can't mention the name of the company, but some companies are getting sued for making these bad products for kids. So they're habituating kids into addiction. So these are digital platforms, and these companies are being sued.
Exactly,
Their
because
design is not responsible because they're collecting data to addict people.
that is the challenge with basically, right? With AI, there is also little, this thing is also because, if someone is not ethical, the company is not ethical or responsible or someone, that's the reason I always say that designers to be, there is something called dark patterns in design, right? It basically it addicts you to do certain things or click in that particular direction, and basically they might steal your money or whatever thing, right? Or for advertising, or gaming or so many things, right? So this is where I think that's the reason I think design is a responsibility, right? And it's all plays on the whole organization, business ethics, and all of those things too.
Wonderful. You have 20 plus years experience in this user experience domain. And now I see where it comes from. It's so vast. There's so much depth in this. You also serve on the board of several organizations which are propagating UX, not only in the US, but also in India. So it's good data, good design. So tell us about which organizations you're on the board of or co-chair of. I know some universities you're on the board of, and in India you're co-chairing some UX design initiatives like all over India. So these are great. Tell us about that.
So I think some people we are just like design activists.
Activists. Wow. Tell me about the activism.
It's basically we are propaganding telling about why design is important from many years. In fact, last 20-22 years, right? Design didn't have that awareness. Usability was not that awareness. Everything is afterthought, right? Now everyone understands the value of it, right? But last 20 years, we are realizing design, making sure people understand the value of design. As part of that, I am a part of multiple nonprofit boards where I was helping them to co-chair, helping to organize programs, conferences, etc. Both US, India, and Europe. So India, especially this is the biggest one. My friend who started something called UX India, one of the biggest UX communities and conference. Every year, even today, we go and do a conference. It's India's biggest conference, especially promote design and leadership thing. We do so many programs as part of that, and especially it's kind of a give back to the community thing. And second, I do something in Europe, basically help in education related stuff. And I was on the board previously for Cal State University on customer experience, especially always my propaganda is on design.
Your experience is, how is it tied to you? It's intuitive, but how does it tie technically? How does it tie?
So think about this, see, user experience, customer experience. Customer experience is you here in user experience is user who is using a product. Customer experience is also similar, the experience of a customer, of a service or whatever it is. You went into a hotel, right? You check into a hotel, you get your card, you paid, and went into the hotel, and you check out. That all experience, right? That's all customer experience. Everything is an experience. It's a different method in kinds of what you take, what data you collect, what practice, the customer journey maps you create. It's a design methodology, philosophy, and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So that's thing. And then I'm also active in Silicon Valley and AI ecosystem. I'm also a chair for design council for multiple things, especially Founders Creatives one. We look at a lot of these AI startups, helping a lot of this AI, and especially it's more of knowledge sharing, right? I go and teach in so many schools across the globe. That helps me to share back my knowledge, and also that's the way you learn. Actually, in fact, I love it's what Salesforce is. Salesforce also have this 111 program. They actually they encourage teams to volunteer for community good. In fact, they also donate. They also do a lot of programs. Actually, that's super fascinating. Especially it's kind of that's where I said my values and my organization values. That's where I got super excited about Salesforce.
So you're in a great place, great way to start your tenure at Salesforce. On that note, I want to ask you a few rapid fire questions, whatever's on top of your mind. So this is a little hard one, but I'm sure you'll wing it. Dynamic UX, zero UI, or multimodal UX?
Anytime.
Yeah, this will dominate.
Because
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. Because see, users are multimodal now, right? Think about multimodal is like in any kind of modality, right? It could be text, it could be TV, or it could be gesture, or it could be system, or your iPad, or whatever thing, right? The design, whatever you're going to do, the products or services or design, whatever, right? It don't need to be in one thing. It could be in multiple things and multiple work seamlessly. But there are different form factors. That's the opportunity we have.
So you see that as an opportunity. Wonderful.
And agents, by the way, agents work in all of these modalities
They have
now.
the capacity to adapt.
Right, because it can work in any modality. In fact, we are doing so much of stuff like that. We're working on copilots, agents, and in-context copilots to voice conversational to so much.
I can't wait to see what will happen to driverless cars. So it's like a platform. Car is a platform now. You can do so much, and it's naturally multimodal. There's a lot of multimodality. Yeah, I think that's a great opportunity. So you trademark your name and logo. What is the most underrated piece of personal branding advice you have for designers today? Like, people are not doing it. It's staring them in the face, but they're not doing it.
I think see, coming from advertising background, right?
My God, you have communications, you have advertising, you did VFX, you did human factor. Let's start a company together. All right.
So see, I think branding is an essential thing. See, everything is a brand to me. Every person is also a brand, right?
Absolutely agreed.
Because there is one Vida, there is one Ranjit.
We
You
have
are
a
brand for
story.
yourself.
We
You
have
have a story and you have expertise. You have your own philosophy. Every person has a brand.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, okay, and well done on that. In the era of AI, what is one traditional design skill which is about to become obsolete? Like, people learn it in the school, but it's of no use.
Oh, that's an interesting one, right? Especially, I think there are multiple things, especially. I think, if you ask me one thing, right, I would say tools.
Tools, right? I was also thinking.
Tool, right? And no tool, basically,
Yeah, I was talking to another UX person. They said these guys spend 6 months on the Figma designs. Who's going to use it? Every 6 weeks, we are changing the prototype. So yeah, that's one of the tools. Figma is useful, but for certain aspects, tools are not going to be
I'll tell you
useful.
one thing. See, especially unfortunately, there is one bad thing also in the industry right now, right? A lot of people, a lot of designers, especially, are tool designers, right? That's the challenge, right? Basically, tool designers cannot survive in this AI world, right? Tool people who are really good at tools cannot do. Especially, it's all about design is all about problem solving skill set, right? That's the fundamentals of design, the empathy, the understanding, identifying a problem, navigating the problem, the thinking process is there, like the problem solving thinking, and even a lot of thinking AI is doing right now, right? But what makes differentiation is clearly identifying and creating value for that so that it solves the user problem directly, because this is where the design shines, right? For example, if you just stick on tools, unfortunately a lot of schools are very obsessed on tools, but tools changing now. Tools I don't think tools play any major role, maybe play to certain level, but not anymore.
Yeah, that's a great insight. I think there were many hot takes today in our podcast. This is definitely one of them. On that note, what is the one career decision which most people disagreed with, but you took it and you're very happy about it?
I think like career design is design, to be honest, right? Because when I took, at least my family, like I'm the only designer, and like
Okay.
everyone is an engineer, so that when I was taking, people were not supportive. Typically in India, right? The engineer or doctor,
Doctor or government
government
job.
jobs. In fact, like all my family is from government, so
Secure jobs.
secure
Secure
jobs.
jobs. And that you did a startup. So start with. So
And then that too, right? Especially like all weird things, especially I did, collecting matchboxes, domain names, naming them behind
the
like.
crazy stuff. Okay. I'm also going to put a matchbox. And then whenever I see it, I'll remember the 3 design principles you explained to me. Wonderful. And this is the last question. What do you want people to remember you by when they think about you? What, for example, as of now, I want people to think I'm a great podcaster. That's me. What do you want people to remember you by? Because you're so many things in one package. So what do you want people to remember you by?
I think like, I will still say design. But I'm a designer because, I feel like thing is like, see, I'm very passionate about it, number one. I have a lot of pride in it. And I do think, like, people who are interested in should take it and talk. I'm a designer. People should say that. That's just like, how people say, okay, I'm an engineer. Designers should speak, I'm a designer, because, you are doing problem solving. And you should uplift yourself, your profession, and your also share. And I want everyone to be a designer, in fact. What people don't know is everyone is also a designer.
Yes, they are.
Do you design your day?
Yes, I design your life, design your career, design a work-life balance.
That's also design. It's not, don't need to be UI, right?
Wonderful. On that high note, we have a person who can design anything. It was a huge honor to have you on my podcast. So many hot takes. We'll make sure that this podcast is processed and the audience get to see it as soon as possible. Thank you so much for being
Thank
on
you,
our
Vida. Thank you.
Wonderful.